and welcome to everyone who is in the waiting room. Early bird gets the worm. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We are talking a little bit about digital versus traditional advertising, what's next when it comes to each, and how to identify dollars that are wasted or things that could be improved. I am all about taking control of your metrics and your journey. So I am joined today by two people who feel the same. Going to introduce them in just a minute, but before I do, just to let everybody here know, if you are not following Bandwango on LinkedIn and Facebook, you can follow us there to get more information or to find upcoming webinars that you can tune into. We do one every month, and next month we're focusing on chambers of commerce. So that's going to be a really cool topic. Hopefully everybody can join us for that one as well. All of our attendees will be emailed the recording of this webinar. So share it with your friends, or if you're watching from a recording, hello, we're so happy that you could tune in. And if you're looking for these recordings online, you can find us at bandwango.com under the resources section, where we always post our recordings of each of our webinars. So with that said, my name is Emily Harris. I'm the Director of Marketing Operations here at Bandwango, and I'm joined today by two of our fellow Utah friends, Sasha Jackson and Josh Shear. From Josh, I don't know if I pronounced your last name correctly.
Yeah, nailed it.
Okay, perfect. From Relic Ad Agency, but also from a really fun podcast that they do. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves really quick and then tell us a little bit about your show?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us, Emily. This is exciting. Yeah, I'm Josh. I am the Digital Marketing Director at Relic Agency and the co-host of Tourism Media Mayhem. That's still a mouthful, even though we've been doing it for like a year now. Yeah, that's me.
I am Sasha. Everything Josh said, but just flip it to the traditional media side, and that's me. So also co-host with him on Tourism Media Mayhem, and I'm the media director, and I handle more of the traditional tactics.
So happy to have you guys.
Oh, sorry. No, but our podcast is to help destinations specifically, and then other marketers with their marketing dollars. So how to spend them, what's better, digital or traditional. It depends on who you talk to, me or Josh. But we talk a lot about the marketing mix and different media tactics and how to approach buying and placing media.
Yeah, and we all know what the right answer is of digital versus traditional, and that's that's why we have the podcast, so we can fight it out in public. Yeah,
starting early, Emily.
It's important. It's important to duke it out. I listened to an episode this morning. I told you guys I listened to the targeting episode. So for everybody who hasn't tuned in, you can find them anywhere you get your podcasts. I am a Spotify listener, so that's where I found it. But how did the podcast start? Just like as a kickoff, why did you guys decide to do it, and what was kind of like the genesis of this starting?
Do you want to answer, Josh? I'll answer. I swear my memory is that I had approached Josh like a couple of times and said, hey, this is a fun idea. What if we did a podcast together about media? And we argued all the time and we had a good time. And he was like, no, I want to do my own podcast, blah, blah, blah. And then fast forward to, I don't know, when was it? Like 6 months ago? And then you came to me and were like, hey, what if we did a podcast? And I'm like, that's funny that you bring that up, because I swear we've had this conversation and now we're doing a podcast.
Oh, there's so many lies in that story.
All the truth.
I don't recall that earlier conversation.
I thought that's what you might say.
Me having my own podcast, that would just be no one needs that.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you guys today about media, because it's something that I am pretty passionate about. I started For those listeners who don't know, I started in the destination space, and in both of my roles, I was kind of managing media dollars, and was so lucky because there were a couple of times where I got to try things that nobody else had tried, and really kind of analyze data. And here at Bandwango, I place paid media for our products too. So if you're getting retargeted, you're welcome. But it's always fun to kind of see what's working and what's not. And today we're gonna try to unpack some hot takes and talk about how to figure out where media is best spent and placed. So with that said, our kind of like introduction topic, I guess, is how not to waste your marketing dollars. I have this kind of like loosely formed sales pitch where I always tell people you're probably spending $10,000 on a digital banner ad that's not working for you. So why not place it with Bandwango? Can you guys debunk that theory, or tell me a little bit about what you think in terms of that $10,000 of wasted media, Josh?
Well, I mean, everybody's got some waste. I mean, I can't say that either Sasha or I are totally perfect, and every campaign has every dollar exactly where it needs to be. I mean, I'm going to be humble that way. Sasha probably would disagree. She's perfect, but I think what I totally derailed myself. No. This happens at least once an episode on our podcast. And so I'm glad it happened early here. No, I think you're right. There's going to be waste everywhere. I audited a PPC account once this was not a tourism client, but I found over $200,000 in 1 year that didn't contribute anything to their bottom line. And that's the scary part. And I think that's what everybody gets scared of when they're thinking about buying media. And especially if you're engaging a third party, like an agency or something, like, are my dollars actually going to be well spent? And so I think that, not to be a fear monger, but yeah, I think it's real. Sasha, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were done yet.
Never.
I agree, and I'm not going to claim perfection either. Even I won't claim perfection either, Josh. But no, I think just having a solid strategy in place kind of helps you understand like where those dollars are going, and I think we'll get into this, but just nailing down your goals and who you're targeting, making sure you have a clear picture of what you're actually planning and placing, and it helps each channel be more profitable and eliminate the waste that you were kind of referring to there, Emily.
Yeah. So I want to dig into like how Josh found those wasted dollars, but maybe before we do that, we talk a little bit about like goals that you guys see perform well, or even just like common goals that organizations have, and how media factors into meeting those goals, either for traditional media or for digital. So both of you, please chime in.
Yeah. I think when I started, I came from my digital marketing background, started in lead gen outside of tourism, and then I kind of found my way into tourism, and it's been super exciting since. But one of the things I realized when I got here 3-4 years ago, it felt like, especially for DMOs, there was not a hard, true like conversion metric that we were going after. It was just like, we need to get people to know about our destination and show up, and maybe we can trace our media spend hypothetically back to the visitors that ended up coming. But I think that's really started to change, and it was really starting to change pre-COVID, like right before the world changed. I definitely was seeing like DMOs feeling a little more pressure up to really prove ROI for their media spends. And from there, I think what has happened is, I think we all kind of got a little excited, maybe, that as we got budget back, that maybe we could be a little loose with our dollars again and just start getting our name out there again. But that hasn't happened. If anything, I'm feeling more and more from our clients that they have to prove the value of their spend more so than they've had to in the past. So with that kind of like timeline, so to speak, I think where, everybody has defined their goals. I mean, I'd like to hear of a DMO that does not track their like brochure downloads or website traffic. Like those are kind of like the defaults, I think, and they have their value. But then I think if the ultimate goal is to get visitation, we should be talking about data platforms that provide visitor metrics that you can tie back to your ad dollars, ad spends that can provide some sort of geo-targeting or geo-conversion tracking, so devices that were served impressions showing up in destination. That's definitely more important. Bandwango's an excellent example of something DMOs could use to, I wasn't paid to say that. But I think Bandwango passes are a great way to say, like, we were marketing this pass to people outside of our destination. They came here and used it. And you can actually tell your stakeholders that you're driving real dollars to their businesses. So, yeah, that was a mouthful.
But yeah, I think to add to what Josh said, as we're looking at goals that have been successful or that have met the metrics that we're looking for, I think it's important to take into consideration where your destination or your business is currently at. Some of the destinations that we work with or marketers that we work with, I mean, if you're just starting out or you're trying to reach a new audience, then you might need some awareness to get your name out there or get your product out there, whether that be through traditional or digital tactics. I think both can accomplish awareness in different ways, but taking a look at where, like, how are your visitors currently interacting with you? Where is your product or your destination at in your marketing journey? Like, do you need more awareness? Like, are your Google searches low? Or are you a larger destination or product that people know a lot about and you're being sought out, and it's really just driving those leads, driving leads. So I think understanding kind of where you're at in the larger picture of marketing and then honing in from there on what your goals need to be to accomplish getting you to that next step is important in setting a goal that is successful. I don't know that there's one type of goal that we've seen be successful for every company, but it's rather just understanding your company and product and then setting your goal accordingly.
I actually agree with you.
Nice. Look at that.
Look at that. We're just mending all these relationships.
If I could build on that a little bit, I think when we're to tie it back to like wasted dollars, I think what Sasha was talking about identifying what your goal needs to be, like, does your destination have an awareness problem or does your destination have a conversion problem? Knowing that first will help you identify easily wasted spend. If your goal is awareness and all you're doing is PPC ads to a booking engine, like, you're not going to get more people to know about you. You're just finding the few people who do know about you. So, and vice versa, so that's a really easy, quick way to find money that maybe should be spent elsewhere. Not to say you can't fulfill on multiple places of the funnel at one time. You absolutely should. You got to keep that funnel flowing. But if you're investing heavily in one side and your problem really exists on the other side, you might want to readdress things.
Yeah. I always tell people, or I had kind of a epiphany one day when I was building out a presentation, because I talk a lot about the funnel and just like how top funnel metrics and bottom funnel metrics like work together and communicate. And I talked during one of these webinars about like drip coffee as kind of like an example. Like, when you're making drip coffee, you're pouring hot water over beans and then the end result is coffee. If you're just pouring hot water through a funnel, the end result is going to be hot water. So thinking about like those mid layers and like what is the action that you need someone to perform? Is it becoming more aware or reading a certain amount of content on your website, or is it really performing kind of a conversion action like Josh said? I think those are things that are so important to think about. And one of the like things that I'm passionate about is there's so much collaboration in this in the tourism space, and people working really well with their vendors. But I think it's so important also to just like really take a step back and think about the objectives that are important to you and how you're communicating those to your vendors so that they can kind of help you facilitate. We are a lot of times like the beans, but if we're not getting hot water at the top, we're not going to get coffee at the bottom. So I think it's really interesting how the funnel works together, but also just how people work with their partners. So if you guys were to like give guidance of like, if someone does want to kind of go back to the start and say, are our goals working for us? How can we start evaluating some of this media spend based on, what's important to our organization, whether it be brand awareness or conversion? What do you guys kind of recommend as like the first step if they're working with a partner or not working with a partner? What does it look like if you're trying to kind of go back to the start and think about how to identify your wasted ad dollars?
That's a great question. I'll take a stab, and then I think I'm sure Josh will have some thoughts on it. My thoughts are, again, just backing it out to the basics, which I think would lead me to your target audience and who you're actually targeting, and understanding what are the actual unique offerings that your destination is offering, or your product is offering. I think a lot of people, a lot of the destination marketing shows a lot of the same activities or benefits or just emotional benefits, whatever it is. I think it's really honing in on what actually makes us unique that can kind of drive that strategy forward, and then developing your strategy from there. So my mind almost goes to just the fundamentals, really, which surprisingly, I think we do see a lot of people skip that step in really honing in who actually comes to our destination, not who I think comes, but who actually comes, not who I'm hearing comes from all of our hotel partners, even like who actually comes. And then moving forward from there. But Josh, what would you add as far as, I don't know, getting more granular and looking at like what media might be wasted?
Yeah, well, I mean, to start things off, if you are going back to like the drawing board, it is a lot of those fundamental sort of things. It's also a matter of gathering as much data as you possibly can. So if you're paying for visa view reports or a visitation metrics platform like Zartico or Datafy or Arrivalist or Adara, all that stuff, Bandwango and analytics, put all that in one place to actually analyze like what's happening in your destination, to help identify those problems. You probably, you should know what your problems are and what you're trying to solve for. Working with a partner, especially whether that's an agency like us or if it's your own internal team, I think you need to make sure that everyone is aligned on the same goals. That is so, so important. I think the clients that we are most successful with are the ones who have a clear idea of what they want their media dollars to accomplish. And then on a regular basis, we're reviewing media performance as it aligns with those goals. So the clients who are less engaged or don't have a clear idea of what their goals are, that's where dollars just will get wasted, because if you're not focused on a North Star, you're never gonna get there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think we see that even here at Bandwango, because I get asked a lot, when we're going through best practices, like where should we be placing our media dollars, or like where best performs for Bandwango passes. And although we know like as a whole where Bandwango passes seem to perform best to drive signups and purchases, and how to kind of get people to those redemption points, at the end of the day, goals for organizations look different. So one of the webinars that I had hosted, we were talking about paid wine passes, and one of our clients was saying that they were hoping to drive a ton of purchases, but when they were talking to their wineries, really their wineries wanted them to focus only on purchases happening with visitors. And so now their metrics obviously look different because their success is defined by the visitors who purchase their passport and not necessarily total purchases. So there are so many factors in determining an organization's goals and how their media kind of aligns with that. And it would be easy if there were a straightforward answer, but really at the end of the day, it's about like stakeholder engagement and how you're communicating like what's important to them and what's important to you. So I think, yeah, it's really interesting to kind of consider like, where do you start over if you do think you need to start over, or at least like how to kind of evaluate like where you're at. I would say, like as a former DMOer, if you don't know how much money you're spending in different channels, like that's a great place to start, because sometimes you sign off on that media budget and you're like, cool, someone else is gonna do it, But then you can look back and be like, wow, why are we spending $30,000 with this place? Or like, where is this media really being delivered to? Because it's easy to kind of, I think, forget and just let it run.
Yeah, and I would add to what you're saying, Emily. Those are great thoughts. I would just add also, if you don't understand the strategy behind each tactic and what each tactic is hopefully accomplishing for you across the course of a year or quarter or however long your flight is, then that is something to reevaluate with whoever's running it or yourself, or just make sure you understand what the end goal is with each tactic and what we're hoping to achieve as well.
Yeah. That's a great point. So talking a little bit more just like about funnels and what we're trying to do, how do you guys kind of go about like building marketing plans for clients, or like what do you recommend as you're starting to like build out these goals with them? Like what are kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in building out a plan based on a hierarchy of goals?
It's all about fighting. We just fight about who gets the money.
Yeah.
We just goals and then we fight over budget.
I think that's how everybody would expect for it to work. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I'll take a stab at this, I guess. I think where we always start with our clients is having that like initial kind of discovery meeting where we're talking about the problems that they have to address, the questions that their board and stakeholders are asking, and then taking that knowledge, mirroring it with any sort of analytics that we have, that data stuff we were talking about, and then taking all that information and putting it into a media mix. And I think that is where more of the fighting starts. But it usually we make it a little more dramatic than it actually is. We don't really fight, and usually if we're on the same page about goals.
Don't give away our secret.
I know.
A podcast to run.
All right, this is the end. No, if we're truly aligned on goals, then we can kind of decide how much needs to be spent in which part of the funnel. So if we know we have more of an awareness problem, then we can start talking about, okay, what awareness tactics are going to be most effective for their ideal visitors, and then kind of deciding on what that percentage breakdown should be. That's kind of I think I'm describing our process fairly well, Sasha. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And from there, when we start looking at actual media channels, like what makes sense, we look at the watering holes of where the target audience is, right? Where are they consuming media? When are they consuming media? When are they booking their trip? And then we can kind of plan out seasonality and, and take into consideration any events that are going on for the client and those types of things when we get down to like the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Targeting gets important. Yeah.
Yep.
So I have a question. I feel like one thing that came up from time to time when I was at a DMO placing media is there are things that everybody knows works, right? So like PPC and those things that it's just kind of like foundational and like you need to do it. But I feel like from time to time, the thing that really wins awards or gets attention or your stakeholders really like to see are like the sexy ad buys. So like the exciting things that are a little bit different or like really, techie or just something that everybody sees. Like, people love connected TV and commercials. So do you guys have anything that's like super sexy that you're like, oh, if you are looking to make a splash with your stakeholders or with someone who prefers like a sexy media buy, what does that look like for like the digital and traditional? Like what's something trendy that people could like take away from all this really great information about like how to build a solid marketing strategy? If you've got people who are just looking for flash, like what does that look like these days?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Such a good question. I have one that came to mind, but I also think it's very like applicable, not just sexy.
That's even better.
Right. So no, but some OTT partners, which is just streaming TV, we like, I think Josh touched on this, but there's always a gap in destination marketing as far as, especially with traditional media, who's seeing my ad and who's coming to my destination, closing that full gap on return on investment, right? Like who's actually visiting. And some OTT partners can now track footfall traffic from someone who, let's say, saw your TV ad in Denver and then crossed over into your county lines and came to visit you, which I think is really exciting. I guess it's probably sexy for board members to hear about reporting. I don't know, is it? But it paints a good picture of the success that we've seen with some traditional media tactics in saying, hey, this is not only driving awareness, but this is actually driving visitation as well, and hopefully they interacted with, other tactics that you had online and then chose to come as well. So there's some of that plays into the whole piece of the pie there so Josh doesn't yell at me. But I think that is something that's been exciting, but we've kind of seen emerge, like there are some new tracking capabilities for traditional media that are really interesting, and OTT kind of swings back and forth between digital and traditional. And so there is a little bit of that there, but that's a cool product that you can actually track footfall traffic on now, depending on your partner.
Yeah, I won't say either Sasha or I are very creative. So like if you're looking for a really sexy piece of creative, I don't look at us. Like
we let the designers do that.
Yeah. The smarter people for that.
Directors do that.
Yeah, but I think Sasha kind of went where I was going. I think where we're seeing like problems with third-party cookies now, and I'm sure everybody here had to deal with the Facebook iOS 14 issue last year, and we're still dealing with it. And it's going to get worse as Google phases out third-party cookies. So maybe it's less sexy and more out of necessity, but I think there is some really cool stuff you can do with device IDs. That beyond just OTT attribution, you can build audiences of visitors of other destinations and then encouraging them to come to your destination. One thing I would love to have a client do is get really aggressive with their competitive targeting of another neighboring destination. Like, oh yeah, well, you love Laguna Beach, we'll come down to Dana Point or something. I don't know, and get really kind of aggressive with it. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I tell people from time to time, like a really fun strategy is like pick a fight with someone. And I think this kind of like goes into that same thing where it's like, if you want to be known, and it kind of comes from the point of like the Kansas City Taco Trail, which was like such a hugely successful Bandwango product, had a Forbes article written about it that was basically like, there's no way that the best tacos in the United States are in Kansas. And Texas Monthly had kind of like written this like rebuttal, all this stuff. And it's so funny because that's really what gets people's attention. Like they love the idea that like there are these like rival things. Yeah. Mark Dunker says, be the Wendy's of a DMO. Like, yeah, I think it's so fun when people like pick a fight and really try to like put their stake in the ground as like one of the best places to go for a particular thing. So I think that's like a really interesting idea, is like to get super competitive with one of your like, like-minded DMOs, to really compete for that target audience.
I think it would be fun to do it in conjunction with another DMO.
Yes, like not like without
together.
them knowing. I always tell them like make a friend, and then that's the strategy that you guys can use. Don't just like throw a lot of hate at a destination who's not expecting it.
I mean, but good marketing is entertainment, and there is no, like, if you're thinking about any sort of radio program or TV show, radio program, am I like 90? I don't know. Podcasts, conflict makes it all better.
I was like, wait a minute, coming over to my side of things.
Back in the day, no one listens to radio anymore. I'm sorry, Sasha.
Okay, well, that's your opinion.
Oh, okay. Sorry, devolving. Emily, get us back on track.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. We've talked a lot about like wasted spend, being sexy, the stuff that works well. Can you guys talk a little bit maybe about like what tracking looks like these days? Because we've talked about like a few different ways that people are tracking particular goals, like maybe it is Bandwango Pass signups or traffic to a page. What does tracking look like these days on your end? And what are you kind of like looking forward to in terms of tracking, or what scares you? So we talk a lot about cookies. What does the future of tracking look like, and what does tracking look like right now for you guys?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things I've seen just from like a housekeeping kind of perspective is I don't know of a single DMO that I've worked with that that has every valuable action on a website like set up to be tracked in analytics and then tied to any sort of marketing spend. So when in doubt, I would say work with your partner or whoever is managing your analytics and kind of make sure that every valuable action that someone can take on your website is being identified and tracked. You can look at page views all day long with the general analytics setup, but you can't necessarily see clicks. And if you've got clicks leading out to partners' websites or hotels' websites or anything like that, you need to make sure you can report back to that and show people the amount of traffic you're sending to them. I think, when it comes to like conversion tracking for ads, it's going to be a little bit tougher with cookie problems and that sort of thing, but I'm not all doom and gloom about it. I think we're going to be okay, especially with any sort of first party data set. You'll be able to see the performance that you need. I do think that it is more important now than ever before to set aside dollars for a visitor metrics platform. And so something like a Zartico or a Datafy, I think one of the things that we're still trying to put the pieces together on is being able to draw that line from an ad to a visitor, and you'll get closer to that with more of that data. And I know that's kind of pricey and it can be scary to invest in that, but if you're worried about wasting spend, that's probably the best thing you can do.
I like that. I think you summed it up great, Josh.
Wow.
Sometimes we're nice to each other.
It's sweet when it happens. Just a reminder to everybody in the audience, if you have a question for Josh or Sasha, please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A. I want to make sure everybody comes out of this with some really good ideas about how to take next steps and like own their digital media and traditional media in a more effective way. It's really so important that everybody gets like kind of a third-party perspective from time to time to figure out like, oh, what are other people doing that's working really well, or what could we be doing a little bit better? So if you have questions on anything from, a cool new idea to something that maybe doesn't work as well anymore, please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A channels, and we'll do our best to answer it. So with that, I do have a question. Like, what do you guys see as like the past? Like, what are you trying not to do anymore? Or do you feel like we used to do this and maybe now there's something better, or there's like a good alternative for, you know, a buy or a particular goal that a client has? Is there something that's like really just like gone the wayside that you would tell people like there's a better alternative to now?
I'll start, and Josh's might be partly mine as well. Okay, I love traditional media. I think targeted print buys can be very effective, but sometimes what we see when we start with a new partnership is heavy print. Like, if the majority of your budget is in one tactic, it needs to be a tactic that you know for sure is performing outstanding for you. And maybe on the convention marketing side, print is a little bit of a different story. We can be more targeted there. But if you're leisure targeting and your whole budget is print, we need to reevaluate that. I think the numbers have gone down over the years, and I think the more targeted we can be, the more we can incorporate some digital components of that print's audience, the more effective we can be with the print buy. So there are some print partnerships that we've seen do great and that I would still recommend, but there are others that I'm like, I know you met this person at a trade show, or this person has hit you up 5,000 times. I understand that, but let's make sure they're hitting our audience, or that we're seeing some kind of return with, I don't know, just at least like some searches to the site, or, you know, whatever we can track with that metric. But that is a tough one that I evaluate pretty closely. Also, like, how is it being distributed? Is it going directly to homes? Is it just in a magazine rack? Like, are people still buying it? Like, do you have the counts on that? So there's just a lot with print that I eagle eye, I guess, you know, that I think when we come in, we do usually chop like the percentage that goes into print on a budget for the most part. So I know that's one immediate one that I'm just really picky with, and I want to make sure it's hitting like as niche as we can, and then we usually see it do a little bit better.
That's a good point. So Phyllis asked you in our chat channel, how effective do you feel like billboards are for DMOs? So I feel like this is probably relevant to this discussion point.
You bet. I feel like they can be extremely effective, and we definitely have used them. One way I've seen them be effective is on your drive markets, when people are kind of coming along some main arteries to your destination, like a prompt to stop, or just the acknowledgement that, like, the awareness that they're coming through your area, that you're there. But it kind of goes back to your goals. I mean, sometimes we can't capture what we want on a billboard or some traditional tactics as well. And so it's not always the first awareness channel that I would look at. And I would say we have used it for heavy drive markets. And then when we have additional awareness spend, outdoor can get expensive. So I don't always feel like it's the best solution for like small to medium sized DMOs, just because of that factor when it comes to outdoor. But I also, if you have events are another time during the season, your seasonality, that we've looked at outdoor, that we've seen it be really successful to drive awareness for a specific event. But yeah, the placement has to be just right, I guess, with outdoor. So it kind of depends on your market. Some markets aren't outdoor heavy either. Like, some I can't even buy billboards like in the city or in the suburbs where we want them. And then it's like, oh, it's a moot point. So there's a lot that goes into it. I hope that answer was helpful. We've seen it be successful, but it has to be targeted. Yeah.
And if I may, just because I actually, outdoor is probably my favorite traditional tactic. And where we have seen it be successful is when it's not done in a vacuum. It's when it's done along with a saturation of other awareness plays. So maybe that's some heavy social and display in the same market, and maybe it's hitting other traditional channels within the same market. I don't think, in my opinion, it's a hard case to do outdoor alone.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that, Josh. Super, super important with outdoor. I'll add one more thing and then we can move on if there are other questions. But also with outdoor, very important how you approach your creative. I've seen clients want to put way too much verbiage on there, or just cram it, or lighter coloring that looks really nice on a design on a computer but is not legible on a board. So I would just take that into consideration, start like maybe looking at boards and seeing what catches your eye and what you can actually read and take away and comprehend from a billboard. That is a little bit of a sticking point for some people too.
What's so funny and like relevant to this, so when I first was out of school and like had started my first job, I started it in this place that was like super heavy with trees. Like the whole like master plan of the community was like that things are hidden behind these trees, and so it like feels like you're just like driving through this forest. And I had probably lived there for 6 months, and I was like, I don't know my way around. Like I can't find anything. I'm still using my GPS to like get anywhere. And I realized it was because I needed glasses. I couldn't read this like street signs because and that was the only way to find your way around because everything was hidden in these trees. So like I was like, oh shit, like I need to get glasses. That's what the problem is. But it's so funny because billboards are the same way. Like billboards for me now, I will drive down like a road and I'm like, oh, that is a really cool placement. And it seems like it would be a good billboard, but I can't read it. And I think it's something people don't think about. Like you have to imagine that people are, like
it's like 3 to 5 seconds.
Terrible vision.
Yeah. 3 to 5 seconds.
Exactly.
So what you can take away in 3 to 5 seconds, it's like your logo, really an image. I mean, there's really not much. You shouldn't have more than like 8 words, including your logo on there. So, and that's might be on the high end. But also with outdoor too, if you're placing in another market that you don't live or you're not as familiar with, sometimes the photos that you could purchase for billboard, like you don't understand like the full area. So it's important to have somebody who is like boots on the ground or very well versed with the market that can say, hey, this is a good location and it is a good read, because sometimes you see a photo and you don't really comprehend exactly like everything that's around it or how it is driving by. And so that's another tricky part with outdoor, that you kind of have to rely on someone who knows if that area and like that location is going to be actually beneficial, because it is expensive, to place.
Yeah. So Josh, I still want to get to you in this question, but Mark asked Sasha, what do you feel like is more important to target, groups or leisure travelers in print, and like which gets better return on investment in your opinion?
I would probably even go with groups, honestly. Yeah. I would say groups. I probably have done more leisure. Like a lot of our partners do a little bit more leisure, but I think with groups, we've seen, some great success. If you're hitting like meeting planners, it's such a niche group that there's usually like a loyal following and it's being mailed directly to them. And you're able to facilitate a lot of that convention and group planning. On the leisure side, it really just has to be used as an awareness tactic for the most part. And so it's hard to track return, but we've worked with some partners who have seen great responses from certain partnerships on print with groups. Yeah. They can kind of track because they know who's like booking and where it came from. And anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Josh, anything to add on that?
No. No, I think you got it.
All right. So you're in the hot seat now. What do you feel like is in the past for digital, and like what's maybe a good alternative to that these days, or what's your hot take? What are you tired of placing for people?
Well, one, I would stop relying on retargeting if that's been a heavy part of your strategy because of the cookie issues that we keep referencing. It's going to become less and less effective. So I'd stop relying on that and start reinforcing that brand with people who with those audiences in the places where they hang out. But along those lines, I think I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. I think Facebook it's good, but it's becoming less good. And I basically think everybody should kind of prepare to start pulling back there more and more and finding other places. I think for the first time in ever, I think Facebook lost quarterly users in this last quarter. So, I mean, really, what Facebook loses in a quarter is like nothing in the grand scheme of things, if we're being real. But it is getting used less, and it's less relevant for younger demographics. So as your audience ages, it's just going to continue to be less and less relevant. I think kids who are not using Facebook now are not going to use Facebook later when they're older. I don't think that's going to happen. So start planning on phasing out Facebook. Keep using it while it's effective for you. If you're getting a good return on your spend, you're getting cheap email signups or whatever you're trying to accomplish with that, keep using it, but I'd be prepared for it to continue to get worse. But with that being said, I think TikTok is probably the most important thing that everybody should be looking at. Like Sasha and I have attempted to do a little TikTok.
We're so bad. We haven't posted in like so long. Don't look.
Yeah, it's been a few months. If you really want to be entertained with some really bad content, go check out our TikTok channel.
Yeah.
Way to sell it.
Yeah,
we're not the creative types, but I think people are spending so much time on TikTok, and I saw a stat yesterday that TikTok was the most downloaded app in the US last year. It is so relevant to the current culture, and especially with millennials and younger, you have to be there, whether it's from like just organic content and posting cool videos about your destination to actually doing some paid promotion.
Josh, paid content on TikTok has a high minimum, doesn't it?
It has, but if I recall correctly, don't quote me on this, anyone. I think is decreasing over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Because that's the only hindrance for some people getting on some platforms like that, like TikTok, even Hulu sometimes. Like the minimum spends are they're high. If you're a small to medium destination, then you want to do more than one tactic, which you should do more than one tactic. So.
Yeah. I think it's so funny because TikTok is one of those things where it's easy to kind of write it off as like, oh, well, this is just like, dancing, or like it's just one thing. But it is so funny because the content on TikTok is so diverse at this point. And anybody who's attending this webinar, if you don't have a TikTok, you really should get one, because you can find so much good information. I had to do a presentation a few weeks ago about something I never talk about, which is social media. And I looked at social media like management on TikTok, at all these different, managers who are talking about the way that they plan content or the tools that they're using. It's such a good resource for like new and different ideas for so many different types of organizations or types of things you can find. I mean, TikTok's like the new YouTube. Yeah,
it's true. Mark, I see your question there about what platform besides TikTok would be good for younger demographics. I would add Instagram to that list. I think even though Instagram's got some age on it compared to TikTok, it's still very influential for that demographic. I don't think I've seen mixed results for our clients on TikTok. I think, especially from like an ads side of things, people are not as conditioned to make a purchase or something from a TikTok ad like they are with a Facebook ad. But it's still a very effective awareness and consideration play, especially for, millennials and younger.
Yeah, I know this isn't social media, but Spotify also lives right in that like 18 to 34-year-old demo. The bulk of their subscribers fall in that younger group too. So for streaming audio, kind of related, Spotify is nice for that younger group.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, that's a great point, both of you guys. So cool. I mean, we've talked and covered so much ground here. Is there anything that you guys want to bring up or talk about that we haven't discussed? Because I know that we've talked a lot about full funnel and different trends and metrics. Is there anything that you guys want people to walk away from that we haven't discussed yet?
I mean, I could talk for hours probably about all this stuff. But I think a couple of points I want to like just get out there, if I could, would be if you're working with your in-house marketers or a third party like an agency, don't let them get away with just showing you vanity metrics. Clicks and impressions are good, but if they don't tell the full story, especially if you've got hard and fast goals that you've agreed on with them, they should be reporting on conversions. They should be tying back their media buys to increases in tax revenue or looking at visitation metrics. I think that's super important. The other thing I would encourage everyone to do is don't view any one piece of information in a vacuum. Like one channel will affect another channel. We've definitely seen conversion metrics on PPC go down when we turn off display ads. Like everything affects each other. So if you are thinking about making changes, know what could happen when you do make a change and then look for it. And then you can either validate whether or not what you were thinking was true. So do testing, but don't just look at 1 month of data and decide that channel's worthless if maybe the 3 or 4 months before were great. Like 1 month does not equal a trend. So pay attention to trends and don't silo your view of things too much.
Yeah, I think my point, I was thinking along the same lines as you, Josh, and just looking at a holistic marketing plan, or at least exploring holistic marketing channels. Like if you haven't delved into awareness, there are like a lot of traditional media tactics have just changed over time. And there are some cool tracking opportunities and capabilities with some traditional media tactics. And so if that has been a sticking point in the past, maybe just again keep up on what's happening with those tactics in the market, because like we talked about with TV, with streaming TV, we can actually track footfall traffic, which is really exciting. And there are just some cool ways that we can marry traditional and digital marketing so that you're driving more leads to your digital tactics, more leads to lower funnels. So if traditional is something that you've kind of shied away from or not seen the benefits of, I would probably urge to do a little bit more digging there and see, just at least understand like what the capabilities are now and how it could maybe benefit your overall plan. Because not doing really anything in a vacuum, I think, helps the overall strategy. And again, you're capturing more up top, more of the leads, and then you're just funneling them down. So yeah, I think just the full circle, the full picture is the most beneficial for most people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think like when we talk to clients now, it is all about like the full funnel strategy and like what are you trying to get? What's your coffee? How are you making that happen? Like what's the water that you're pouring in? What are the beans? It's really about kind of thinking through how all of it works together. I'll give everybody like a quick example because I think it's so relevant. I love to give the shout out, but Visit San Antonio did an incredible job creating kind of like a full funnel marketing campaign. Last summer, they launched a passport with Bandwango that was focused on their hotel VIP program. So anyone who stayed in a hotel would get discounts through a Bandwango passport. But they did this really big connected TV campaign that was all about seeing San Antonio again, directing people to a landing page where it had some information about things that you could do in San Antonio, but also this prompt to book one of these hotels that were, linked on their site. Those hotel bookings drove people to this VIP package. So, really thinking about that consumer journey can lead you to a really great strategy. And, to both of your points, like there are so many different cool tracking opportunities now with media, but it really is about understanding like what's the goal that you're trying to accomplish and how can you think about it from everything that goes into traditional to digital media and really diversifying those tactics so that you can reach people at all different phases of their journey.
Well said.
Thank you. Well, this has been so much fun. I want to give you guys a chance to tell people where they can find you. So do you want to plug your podcast and let people know where they can find you? And then also any LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter that you guys want to point people towards?
Yeah, you bet. You can find us on all of the regular streaming, wherever you consume your podcast, you can find us for Tourism Media Mayhem. And then we are on, Josh, let's see, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, which I know we really sold TikTok, but we are there. We're learning how to produce organic content because we do paid. So anyways, but no, thank you so much for having us. This has been so fun. We've loved it.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
Great. Thank you guys so much. For everybody who's tuned in, just a reminder, you can always find Bandwango on LinkedIn and Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel where these videos and more about the platform are hosted, so please subscribe. And if you're just looking for more information on the platform, you can always find it at bandwango.com. I'm Emily, spelled a little bit weird, IE at the end, but my email is pretty easy. It's emily@bandwango.com. So if you have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out. I'm also happy to connect you guys to Josh and Sasha so that you can get more information or pick their brains if you're interested in what they had to say today. So thank you all for tuning in, and thank you guys for being such wonderful co-hosts with me.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day, everyone.